Hey everyone, we are wrapping up this latest wave of Spider-Man themed Marvel Legends today with the Build-A-Figure. We are going to be taking a look at Lizard, and thankfully we don't have any packaging again because, like I've said, I am tired of opening Marvel Legends boxes, so let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here is our fully assembled Lizard Build-A-Figure, and I was actually going to put this guy together on camera, but in kind of contrast to the recent Sasquatch Build-A-Figure that I reviewed, the joints are very, very tight in comparison here. So Sasquatch was kind of loose. Lizard has some really tight joints that made it very, very cumbersome to actually assemble him on camera. So I figured I would spare you that, and we just weren't going to do that now. This figure is something I was looking forward to. I am a fan of the Lizard as a Spider-Man villain. I like the idea of just a giant scientist lizard guy who is rampaging throughout New York City. I like it. I don't particularly have any attachment to this design or this look. I don't know where they came up with this look. I'm sure it exists somewhere in Marvel Comics, but I just don't really know. Beyond that, he kind of doesn't really look like a lizard. There's kind of the whole dinosaur debate that's going on around this figure. And I fully understand where that's coming from, but we will talk about that shortly. Let's go ahead and we'll take a look at, all the normal stuff. We'll start with articulation, and then we'll get into paint and sculpt. So as far as articulation goes, this guy has a lot of normal stuff, but he's also got a lot of different stuff. He has some parts that are sculpted and designed and engineered in such a way that normal joints just don't work on him. He's got some extra things. We've obviously got that tail, but let's take a look. So we've got a head that the head itself just goes up and down and has the articulated jaw. The tongue does not move. It's not supposed to anyway. I'm sure you could figure a way to pull it out, but it doesn't come out. It's not a bendy wire. It's molded that way. The neck can go around, sort of. It's mostly a side-to-side motion though, and that's attached at the top of the shoulders. The arms can go out to build a figure, so be careful when you're doing this. Too much pressure and it's going to pop out, but they're not as loose as, like I say, the Sasquatch figure. They can rotate, bicep swivel, double jointed elbow. We've got hinged and swiveling wrists. The ab crunch on this guy is kind of interesting. It can go backwards, but the lab coat really restricts it. That said, he's not really supposed to go backwards. He is always, almost always, I believe, hunched forward, and that actually works really, really well. So there's a lot of forward motion on that crunch. He does have a waist twist. The legs go out that far, and the knees do not go forward at all. They go back one click, but the kneecap here stops the joint from moving. That's part of what brings about some stability issues with this figure, which we will talk about. He's got the little rocker and hinge at what would be the ankle, and then they've got this swiveling rocker type joint here for the toes. Now the big thing for me in terms of articulation that's kind of different outside of the toes and the head is, of course, the tail. So we'll spin him around, and the tail attaches via a peg at the back of at the butt really. It pegs in there, it can rotate, it can move up and down a little bit, but then you've got these hinged and rotating segments that are just frankly kind of ugly. They are incredibly functional, don't get me wrong, they do their job, but they don't really look very good, I don't think. I don't really care for this design. I don't think it looks very good. I would have preferred a more, I don't know, a soft piece of rubber plastic or something like that. Maybe with a bendy wire. That would have been great. Do a little more dynamic motion in there. This does its job because you can use it to kind of support him a bit. Put it on the table. It helps him stand up because he is hard to pose since he stands on his toes. Or that's how he's supposed to stand anyway. But it's just kind of ugly. It's very weird. Eventually, I'm sure I will come to not care, but now that I've got him in hand, kind of first thing, it's definitely something that I notice, and it is something that I'm sure there were other choices on the table, and they went with this for one reason or another, but I'm not a big fan of that particular system of joints. Now, as far as sculpt and paint and the overall design of this figure, most of this figure is very, very much the classic Lizard. The purple pants, the black shirt, the white lab coat, the overall look of his clothes just being ripped to shreds as he transforms into the Lizard. I think it looks really, really good. The big departure is, of course, in this head, and I don't know where it comes from. I don't understand it, but he definitely does not look like a lizard. I'm definitely in the camp that believes that this is very much a dinosaur head, specifically a raptor. All I can really see when I look at this figure is a green version of a raptor from Jurassic Park. That's what I think of. That's really what I see, especially when it comes to just how the musculature and the bone structure is set in the face. These kind of cavities on the side of the nose is really what makes me think dinosaur, raptor. The eyes also as well look very much like a dinosaur. It's not a bad thing, it's just a weird thing. Because at the end of the day, there are very established designs for what the lizard has looked like in the past, and unless this is something new, which it very well may be, I don't know, it just seems kind of like an odd choice. And someone please let me know if you know where that look comes from. I am definitely interested to know what I'm dealing with here. I don't think it looks bad, but I still feel like it doesn't really go with this particular character, at least not when I look at the rest of the figure, because this is very much a classic look. There is a lot going on here too. The lab coat is removable if you wanted to take it off. Just pop the arms off and it'll come right off the torso. We've got the ripped shirt, and inside the ripped pants and the shirt you can see, and of course the jacket, there's tons of sculpted detail in there that show the flesh and the scales of the lizard, and I think it looks really, really good. A lot of that little detail in those small little openings comes through very nicely. We've got tons and tons of texture all over the figure, from the scales on the top of the arms to the smaller scales on the underside, on the legs, down to the toenails, and then of course the tail also has a lot of detail on it, but even the jacket has a lot of detail. We've got the sculpted wrinkles, we've got some tatters, there's obviously some overspray on it to make it look dirty, you know, because the lizard's usually shown as being you know, in the sewers a lot, at least in terms of comic cover appearances, things like that. And I just really, really dig the overall aesthetic that they've got going on here. There's a lot of paint work. It's mostly just different hues of greens and then that overspray. But what we do have here is very, very nicely applied. In terms of the paint, I have zero issues on this figure. I think it looks fantastic. I think they did a great job, and I don't have any splotches or blemishes. As far as the sculpt goes, I'm very happy with the sculpt, and I think that there's a lot of attention to detail in this particular figure, from the tatters on the clothes to all the scales, just everything that makes him look like a lizard. The only real thing is this head, which is odd. It's sculpted very, very well. I just still don't think it actually fits the figure or the character. And again, I've already kind of voiced my displeasure with the tail joints, but the tail on its own, talking about the sculpt and the detail on it, does also look very nice. I just don't like the way it fits together. And because why not, here is the full lineup of this latest Spider-Man themed wave of Legends figures, and I think most folks can agree that this is a pretty strong wave for various reasons. It's a very varied wave in terms of character selection and just choices that they made. I am happy to have some of these figures in my collection in terms of figures that I never once said, hey, you know, I actually need that, because there's a lot here that I really don't know a lot about. But let's go ahead and do the quick ranking for figures that, you know, in terms of just my favorites. So bottom of the barrel is definitely going to be back here. Spider-Woman, I think that is a pretty awful figure in general. Technically speaking, it's fine, but it couldn't be more boring to me. Next up, we'll have Prowler. I like the design, but I hate the cape, and it really bothers me. That's one of my main gripes about it, is I really don't like how the cape works on him. Next, we've got Lasher, just because I don't like how those little tendrils kind of work. I like the figure, though. I think he looks really, really cool. And then we've got the Build-A-Figure, because it does have its issues, but I do think it looks pretty rad. Next, we've got Spider-Punk, one of the characters that, like I said, never said, hey, I need a Spider-Punk figure, but I'm pretty happy to have him because he is pretty cool. Then we've got Gwenpool, another one. Never cared about her, but she's got so much stuff going on, and a white and pink figure really does kind of pop on my shelf, and I'm always up for that. Then we've got Spider-Man Noir over here, and he, like I said in his review, he really surprised me, because I don't know why. I really don't know why I like this figure so much, but there's something about him that I just think exudes kind of a cool factor, so I'm very happy to have him. And of course, like everybody else, because there's just really no choice in this wave, Mysterio is number one. I would have preferred, like I've said, to have the green head on the inside, just because I think it looks cool. The white is definitely more accurate, but this figure is just awesome. Everything about the sculpt, the classic costume, the effects, some of the plastic choices that they used, everything is really cool. So for me, this wave is actually very strong. I am very, very happy to have gotten all of these. There are obviously a couple that I don't really care for, but overall, I'm very, very happy, and I think that it's a pretty well-rounded yet varied wave of figures, and the Lizard ties in really well. It's a very big name Spider-Man villain, and I'm glad that they included him as the Build-A-Figure. He does have his issues. He's got some articulation problems. He's got some balance problems, and then that head is kind of weird. You know, I've said it before. I like the design of the head. I think it looks very good. I think it's engineered well. I think it is nice to look at, but it still doesn't really look like the Lizard. It looks like a dinosaur. So, you know, your mileage may vary on that. It's kind of a personal preference thing, but I really do dig the figure. It just has its problems, so take it for what it's worth. That is going to do it for this look at the Marvel Legends Lizard Build-A-Figure from Hasbro. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time.